Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all of you. I'm Shubhendu Parth, editor of Voice and Data and DataQuest, and your host for today's webinar on evolving the network for the next decade. The webinar is part of the magazine's capacity building and information sharing initiative, where we bring to you experts from the industry to talk about technology trends, latest developments, technology challenges, and also how to training programs and strategy sessions. In today's session, we have with us a very distinguished guest with a lot of experience in network operations, planning, design, and engineering. While technology has always disrupted market, business models, and the way things are done, the pandemic has ushered in an unprecedented level of change across sectors, thanks to the massive digitalization. And all this cannot happen without the strong backbone of data network that the service providers have to offer. We all know that networks are getting bigger, becoming more complex and tougher to operate. Today, unrelenting traffic growth, together with broad cloud adoption, emerging IoT trends, and 5G forecasts, are challenging the ability of network operators to efficiently scale their infrastructure, their capacity to accelerate service delivery, and their ability to introduce new service offerings. We also know that as traffic climbs relentlessly and revenue remains flat, the service providers need to change the economics of network operations. There's no doubt that software and automation have a lot in store and they offer immense potentials. There is also no doubt that with the surge in demand, with a change in the way the individuals and organizations operate, and with the kind of services that are constantly disrupting the market, the networks have to grow bigger. They are growing bigger, becoming complex and tougher to operate. However, the good news is that the network infrastructure is also becoming autonomous and smarter by the day. So today we plan to take a deep dive and understand how service providers can transform their business by enabling shifts in architecture, economic, and service experience. And I'm so honored to welcome and introduce our expert for the day, Mr. Vali Sunesara. Vali is a senior manager systems engineering working with Juniper Networks in India. He leads technical aspects of service providers, go-to-market activities in India and SAARC, and drives strategy and solution initiatives for customers across the service provider spectrum, the ISP, and the government sector. He has over 23 years of industry experience and leads the team of technical architects and consultants of Juniper's that handles and supports the Juniper's business in the India and SAARC region. Now, before we begin the session, I would like to make some housekeeping essentials announce. For the duration of the webinar, all participants will be on a listen-only mode. However, you'll be able to send questions through the chat window, and we will take it depending upon the time available for us. Your feedback is also very important for us, and may I request to submit your feedback at the end of the webinar. We have also tried to make the session more interactive, and we have 2 poll questions which will come on your screens during the webinar. You can select the options displayed on the screen and send us your responses. The results will be visible immediately. To begin the session, may I now request Vali Sunesara to present his perspective. And I'm sure you all have a lot of questions. I have 2, and following this presentation, I will get into the fireside chat with him, and post that we'll open the session for Q&A. So over to you, Vali. for your presentation.
Hey, Shubhendu, thanks a lot for introducing me. And as a onset, first of all, I would like to thank the entire audience, for taking out their precious time and joining us for this webinar today. And as the baseline has been said by Shubhendu, I'll be mainly talking about the building blocks or the guiding principle of the evolving network, which are being built to not to just handle the tsunami of current data, but for the years to come, especially in the era of 5G, right? So now, without further ado, let us get started off with some trend what we have been seeing, right? And these trends are quite evident that there is unstoppable demand, which we have been seeing on the broadband network, predominantly driven by the facts like predominantly driven by the facts that what's my screen, sorry. The per user data has been increasing continuously. There is a seamless connectivity demand from between the wireless and wireline. There is a traffic explosion what we have seen during the pandemic, which has like affected this network seriously, and ongoing video and OTT demands in addition to the AR, VR, and cloud gaming. And this is not restricted to the broadband side of it. The trend has been also seen on the enterprise, where we see like there is a massive demand, which data demand, which has been coming from the enterprise side of the network, and that is predominantly moving their applications to the cloud, and from the captive data center to the multi-cloud, and the security piece of it, and especially in the era where 5G will be launched, which will drive this technology and data demand across the consumer as well as the enterprise segment massively, much more faster than what we have seen in the era of 4G. So when we talk about the 5G, right, and that's going to handle just not the consumer segments, but the government, enterprise, and including consumer together. Industry divides this multiple applications basically into three technology domains, which is ultra low latency, enhanced broadband, and the massive IoT. While everybody wants to know, there are so many applications around which has been spoken about. What is going to be a killer application? Frankly talking, nobody is knowing about which is that unique application which will drive the huge transformation. But what we surely know about it, it's not going to be a gigabit broadband, which is a table stake right now. And also what we know that it can be a more than one application working together to drive that end use case. But what more importantly, what we know about here, it's going to be a killer network, which will drive any application, any tailored, which can tailor any application throughout the network, seamlessly delivering the right experience. And that's what we are going to talk about. That killer network is more important than killer application, which can drive any use case. Now the question is 5G technology alone, is it enough to drive this transformation which we have been talking about? Probably the answer is no. The reason here is yes, of course, 5G with the Wi-Fi 6 will enable this thick pipe and the access mechanism for the device or user or consumer to be connected, but we cannot deliver the experience or low latency experience without enabling the cloud, right? Which should be, it can be the cloud can be hosted in centralized manner, distributed manner, a far edge, or even can be in the private environment of the enterprise. So together 5G and the cloud, while they are driving this transformation, they are also bringing the complexity in the network, and this complexity of this network cannot be solved with the traditional method. We need an AI mechanism basically to stitch this together to deliver the seamless experience which we have been talking about in the era of 5G to offer the differential services. Now, if we talk about what transformation we are talking about here, right? To actually enable the SP business transformation. If they do nothing, right? SP do nothing, probably they'll be just maintaining the status quo. With the transformation in the business models, they will have that market cap captured. But what really will actually bring this hockey stick type of curve in the transformation is transforming that operational model along with the business model, right? And that's what we are going to focus today, that how this transformation can be enabled together to really transform the SP business. If we peel off the layer of the onion, right? So as we speak, the 5G is not a standalone technology which will enable this transformation. It's about the cloud, 5G, and AI. While the next generation radio and the next generation core grabs the most of the eyeballs, but 5G is just not around that, right? There are so many building blocks which you can see on the screen of this presentation, which will together enable this network and the service experience to be deliverable on the 5G. If we quickly talk about something, right, what is important as a part of the building block or the foundation, then what you need is any XOL architecture, right, which can connect seamlessly these radio networks, or which are going to be based on front haul, mid haul, or back haul. Any what we call it is XOL. You need that architecture to be in place. You need a segment routing, EVPN, basically to enable the network to driving the traffic intelligently in the network. What we need is also the end-to-end orchestrations. We need the virtual network functions, which will bring the cloud-like agility in the overall deployment of this telecom or the network functions platforms, right? What we need also the AI and ML, basically along with the closed loop automation to drive the experience. So there are so many components, and when we will talk about the transformation, major 5 building blocks, we will talk through some of this, that how Juniper is actually playing the role there. But before that, let us see, as 5G is about the transformation of the business, then how Juniper is playing the holistic role in this business transformation of SP by shifting the architecture, economics, and the service experience. So let us see, what do we mean by the network architecture shift. What we mean here is shifting it from boxes to the virtualized platform, providing the flexibility to the operator to deploy this network elements in a way they want to do it, whether in terms of boxes or virtualized or in a cloud. Fetching everything from centralized to a distributed way, again related to the experience. From static capacity to build a capacity to elastic capacity, which can handle the demand for today as well as for the years to come. Manual ways of operations are not going to work. We need to make it automated. And all this architecture we have been talking about, those don't have to be on basis of any proprietary mechanism. Those have to be completely open so they can integrate with any ecosystem. Security, we cannot forget, right? Because we are talking about more and more connections getting powered on. It essentially means the networks or the end users are going to be more vulnerable. So we need to have a holistic approach for security also, moving it from traditional bolted security to using a connected security. While we see the network as a same platform, and go and apply this policy seamlessly anywhere other than the security device. More importantly, in addition to the architecture shift, the economics is also going to be a key shift in this era, right? So traditionally, if you see, right, how the operators have been buying this platforms, it's on the pricing per box. While they need this capacity, they need this platform or boxes to enable the capacity for the future, but they also need to be conscious about the price here. Hence, what we are talking about here is, rather than talking about pricing per box, we are talking about pricing per use case. Give them option not to pay everything upfront, but pay as you grow. You pay what you are using today, and when you need a more capacity, you just buy the license on top of it, making their TCO from non-linear linear TCO to non-linear. Also provide them the option of deploying these network functions in a most flexible way, with enabling either on the physical device or on the virtual device. Provide more options in addition to the custom silicons which the OEMs have been provided, the merchant silicon option, which can actually further drive down the economics, right? Now, transformation of or shift of the network architecture and operational economics will not make sense for the end users, right, until unless we are able to deliver the experience to the end user. And hence we are talking about here from manual mode of operation to automated of operation, right? Use get away from rule-based rule on the network, static rule, to move it more on the machine learning and AI base. Uh, Move away from the reactive base to more proactive base. Before the problem arises, the network itself should able to see it and heal that problem, so that the customer service end to end is not impacted, his experience is not impacted. From best effort reactive time, we are talking about your closed loop operations or closed loop assurance, where essentially means we just should not fire something in a network and forget about it. We continuously check that certain actions have been taken on the network. Has that solved the customer problem, or we need to go back and do some additional things? And that's what we have been going to emphasize today, that how Juniper is enabling some of these tools which I just spoke about in the real network to solve the operator's issue. Demystifying what we are going to talk, and in a simplistic way, if you have to put this together, so we are talking about 5 major areas where we are looking these transformations: from boxes to the cloud, from centralized architecture to distributed architecture, from static capacity to massively scalable IP fabric with the slicing, and from manual to automated operation, and from standalone or bolted security to connected security. And that is what we are going to focus in the subsequent slides. So let us first start the transformation from boxes to virtualize or cloud native. So first of all, let us go and step back and check, right, why virtualization is important in the transformation of this network. So what virtualization is bringing, right, it's a a cloud-like agility, a web scale agility in the network, where the telco functions or the network functions can be deployed in a scalable, in a flexible and agile manner. They can move these network functions anywhere in the network depending upon the need of the hour. Hence, virtualization is key to actually move towards the cloud and bringing the agility of deployment of all these network functions. Now, the virtualization is something not new, right? This has already started in the era of 4G, where we have seen the packet core have been already like transitioned towards the virtual platforms, so as the other functions in the network like firewall, DPI, or a load balancer. Now, what is really changing in the era of 5G is we are going further ahead from virtualize. we are moving towards the cloudification of the applications. The container itself has the advantage over the VM. That's not the topic of debate right now, but that's where the industry has been moving. So that if you see the transformations which are happening on the next generation core side, it is going to be a complete services-based architecture where applications are decoupled from each other. Operators have been given a flexibility to deploy the best of the application at best of the cost, right? And similar things are happening on the radio side also. If we compare this with the traditional 4G LTE radio, the radio itself has been split into a multiple functions like RU, DU, CU, which can be flexibly deployed anywhere in the network depending upon what operators are trying to achieve. And at Juniper, we are embracing this trend which are driving this 5G deployment by adopting some of these principles, right? So what first we start with the NFVI and telco cloud, which is the heart of the 5G core deployment. So what Juniper bring here is the NFVI and the SDN platform, which can integrate with the any OpenStack, either the free or the commercial model, which is available in the market, and provides the end-to-end orchestration. We can connect any bare metal to virtual machines to bare metal, or virtual machines to the container. We are not just restricting ourselves with this NFVI platform on the connectivity part, but what we are talking about here is additionally providing the embedded security, the load balancing capability, and the service chaining capabilities, which are also going to be a key enablers for offering differential services. Taking this further into the network, we have also virtualized our BNG functions into virtualized BNG, the UPF or user plane functions into a virtual UPF, which can be flexibly deployed anywhere in the network. Customers have an option basically to combine this with the physical infra and use this in a more flexible way so that this user plane can be terminated as near as possible to the consumer. Terminating this near to the end consumer brings the exceptional improvement in the service experience and the performance. We are just not talking about or not restricting ourselves to the UPF or the VBNG, but whatever can be virtualized, whether it's a vRouter or vSecurity, which is our virtual SRX, or container SRX, which provides the security for this multi services based architecture. We are enabling that. And further, we have also virtualized our CPEs to the virtual CPEs, which can host on the enterprise side multiple applications on the x86 or COTS-based platform. So that's what we are bringing in general, that whatever is required to be done from the network function side to be available in the form of virtual or in the cloud native architecture, we do provide that. And good thing is that we also maintain a complete parity between our physical devices and the virtual devices. So that's the first transformation we are talking about. Moving forward, decentralized to distributed architecture. Now, once everything is fetched from the centralized side, definitely it cannot be delivered as the superior experience again to the end customers. As in the era of the 5G, we are talking about the ultra low latency experience, right? And this can be only achieved once these clouds are moved closer to the radio or to the users. So how we are enabling this architecture transformation of the network to move along with the telco applications by enabling the 5G wired wireless convergence in our routing platform. We are also providing a CUPS functionality, which is control plane and user plane separation, where the control plane can be reside anywhere in the network, can be any from the any telco existing vendors, can integrate this with our platform to actually terminate the user plane. So what we are essentially providing is a hybrid model which customer can select and deploy it based on their need. We are doing here in terms of implementing this distributed architecture. We have moved our controller or abstraction layer to the centralized location, so we make basically these distributed edge locations light and agile, and we don't burden them with the load of which is required to be run those abstraction layer and the controller. This telco cloud or distributed cloud which we are talking about, those are also going to be hosting the RAN architecture, which can be based on Open RAN, can be based on any XOL architecture where they can host CUDU in the edge cloud, which can further talk to the radio which are connected at the far end. These cloud are not just going to be restricted up to the service provider. What we are talking about here is implementing this private telco cloud right in the enterprise premises, where we have certain partnership with the partners like StackPath, which can provide this private cloud experience basically to this enterprise. The third dynamics, what we are talking about here is basically moving away from the static capacity to the dynamic capacity. So what do we mean by here? So implementing this platform, a right platform to build this transport network is the key. And they were present earlier, they are going to be present earlier. But what actually change we are offering here in terms of providing a flexibility to the operator that give them the flexible capacity options so that whatever they need to implement, they can implement now with the higher capacity box, but they don't pay that upfront. And when they need to enable the higher capacity, they just enable the license and avoid all this forklift, which is required basically a huge OPEX and CAPEX when you have to do and rip and replace. While the implementing the fatter pipe is essential, what we are also saying here is those pipes have to be more dynamic in the nature and smart to offer only what that specific service desire. Hence, with the again use of the abstraction layer, we can smartly route or differentiate between the traffic and send this via a specific path, optimize the network, run them more hotter, and delay the capex, upfront capex, which operators have to invest in the normal scenario. And all this we are enabling with our platforms like ACX, MX, or Pathfinder to basically making this network more dynamic than ever. Again, it's just not about the capacity and the platform. More importantly, the 5G demands more stringent requirement from the network. Maybe it's timing, maybe it's the latency. Hence, all the platform what we are talking about, which are going to be deployed in the access, edge, or the pre-aggregation location, we are talking about enabling TSN A profile and superior class C clocking support on that box. Fourth and most important transformation we are talking about here is to transform our traditional ways of operation from manual to automated and more advanced. So what do we mean by here is, as a first step, we are talking about collection of this data from the network using the open standards like an open interface like gRPC and streaming telemetry. This telemetry data is then fed to the AI engine, which applies the logic based on the user-defined the benchmarking, or purely based on the machine learning over the period of time. And then we take certain actions, which can be just notifications or could be closed loop, like informing a WAN controller to reroute a LSP or a traffic out of a problematic node or problematic interface, so that that the end users are not impacted and their experience of end-to-end service is intact. And all this, what we are talking about, the automated operations throughout the network, is seamlessly achieved by a Juniper Paragon automated suite, which enables multiple applications under a single pane of glass to be working in a coordinated fashions rather than silos, and making it possible basically to move the operations from manual to AI based, ML based, and experience based. Last but not least, the security part is most important. Any security breach in the network can actually impact the highly configured, sophisticated network. So security is the key, but what we are talking about here is just not enabling the perimeter securities here, which we have been already doing in the era of 4G, like SEC gateways, the GI firewall, the roaming firewalls, which are also going to be there as a part of 5G. We are calling this as a different interfaces now. But what we are talking about here is basically many more things. For example, the DDoS detection, which is happening right now in many operators in minutes, right? We are talking about detecting this DDoS attack in few seconds and actually going and blocking and apply the rule with the sophisticated data plane filters on the routing platform itself, right? And these are very fast mechanism compared to traditional BGP IPFX. We are also talking about implementing a security intelligence on the routing platform itself, which collects the basically a threat intelligence from the Juniper Threat Labs and blocks the communications with command and control IPs and safeguards just not the transport devices but the end user also. And all this security implementation, what we are talking about, it's not on this special routing platform, but we are saying this threat intelligence in a more connected way, in a dynamic way, can go and apply the policy anywhere in the network, maybe it our routing platform, our switching platform, or even the Wi-Fi or cloud platform. So that's what we are talking about, moving away from bolted security to connected security in this slide. Just to sum this up and mapping our portfolio family with this specific area which I briefly talk about in the earlier slide, that what platforms of Juniper family is enabling a specific layer. So what we are talking about here is the ACX, MX, or PTX, which can enable your network on any speed, 1 gig, 10 gig, 100 gig, 400 gig, along with the MACsec capabilities, industry's first MACsec capabilities at the line rate on the 4 gig. In addition to enabling the technologies like network slicing using our controller and segment routing. On the cloud side, we are talking about enabling those cloud with the power of our Contrail networking, our Abstract Fabric Manager, and carrier grade underlay fabric based on our QFX family. And not restricting ourselves just to the hardware platforms. We are providing these functions as virtual platforms also, as we discussed in the previous slide, with the complete 100% parity. And our automation suite, known as Paragon, has multiple applications, right? Paragon Planner, which helps basically operators to plan their network in advance in offline manner and exactly predict something much in advance in the planning phase itself, that how the network is going to respond in the event of failures or additional traffic being put on the network. Our Pathfinder is the active controller which talks to the network in a real time and helps operator to optimize their network, run their network more hotter, and enables the network slicing, which can be mapped to the services. The active assurance we are talking about here is basically the checking the performance of the network on the data plane itself, so that while the passive collection is important, but we quickly detect what's going wrong with that service in the data plane and take the action with the closed loop automation. Our Paragon Insight is a powerful tool basically to collect all the offline statistics and integrate this with either the Paragon Active Assurance or the Pathfinder, basically to trigger the closed loop. We have also gone beyond the network functions, and we are talking about here our RIC, the Radio Intelligent Controller, which we recently acquired in the past to actually go and integrate with the open-air architecture deployment and enable the network slicing from radio to the core and to the transport. And that's what we are talking about. And our connected security portfolio, just not enabling our security features and advanced threat protections and UTM on our firewall, we are talking that applying those policies seamlessly across any gear in the network, whether that's our routing portfolio, our switching portfolio, or our cloud or a Wi-Fi portfolio. So that's it, just to summarize everything together in the short span of 20-25 minutes. I hope I was able to make a point. Thank you, Shubhendu. Back to you. And
Thank
apologies,
you,
just my apology in the beginning. I had some technical glitch when I was trying to present. My basically screen switched back to the the camera mode, and I was not able to see my screen. Apologies for that technical glitch.
It always happens. Technology to her is human, and technology also, now we can say, to her is technology.
Yeah, this laptop is not Juniper, by the way.
So thank you really, Vali. It was really wonderful listening to you and getting so much insight on how to build, as you said, the killer network, as you rightly said, to support the cloud plus 5G plus AI era, and what service providers can do to enable business transformation, the transformation of boxes to virtualized and cloud native infrastructure, from centralized to distributed architecture, and how to make the network more dynamic and demand driven, and how to strengthen the security. So it was a quite complete information on the networks that you shared with us. So thank you again. And now, before we move on to the interactive part of today's webinar, we have two poll questions for our participants. And the questions will be displayed on the screen for around 45 seconds, and you can select the option to send in your responses. Yeah, here it is. So the question is, which technologies are enabling business transformation for service providers? 5G, 5G plus cloud, 5G plus AI, 5G plus cloud plus AI. So your time starts now, and please select your option, and we'll be able to see the result after 45 seconds. So which technologies are enabling business transformation for service providers? Your options are 5G, 5G plus cloud, 5G plus AI, and the last one, 5G plus cloud plus. Thanks. Can we have the answers? Okay. So 92% believe that it's 5G plus cloud plus AI. Great. And 8% believe it is 5G plus cloud. Great. Uh, can we have the second poll question, please? Great. So here's the second question. Which one of these do you consider a major architecture shift? Boxes to cloud, centralized to distributed architecture, static capacity to dynamic capacity, manual to automated operations and connected security, or all of the above? Which one of these do you consider a major architectural shift? A lot of these has already been covered by Vali in his presentation, so I'm sure. Great. So here it is, 86% think it is all of the above. 7% believes it's centralized to distributed architecture, while 7% think manual to automated operations and connected security. Thank you everyone for the quick responses, and kind of it was giving me a feeling of running a technology KBC. So, Wali, what's your first reaction to the participants' response to our question?
Yeah, I think I believe. I mean, I take this very positively. Either the message was resonated well, and maybe like we have highly educated people on this webinar who are probably aware, right, of what's going in the industry, and maybe like this was for them. Maybe it was just refresh. But yeah, I think I just wanted breezily. I just wanted to give the overall perspective, right? I think what are the killer building blocks for the the networks. There could be many more, but I think what we were able to cover up here is the key the parameters. And
Great,
I'm happy.
great.
I think there is a positive response on the right answers.
Great. I thought so.
So am I still sharing my PPT? Sorry, I just
No,
want
no,
to
no,
have
no,
this.
no, no, no. You're not on a PPT mode. Yeah, thanks. So thanks for asking. So let's now move to the second part of this session. And I've been holding my horses. I do have a lot of questions, and there's some questions from the audience also coming up. But we'll follow the format, and we'll first try to do the fireside, and in between, if there is a relevant question which I had planned, I will ask those as well. So the entire this last 18 months or the post-pandemic period that we have lived through, and uh, telecom and broadband have emerged as the backbone of economies around the world, particularly with the accelerated pace of digitalization across sectors. And it is also estimated that at the current growth rate, majority of Indian population will soon be urbanized. So, how ready is the service providers network in India at the moment? Since you have been interacting with them, you interact a lot with service providers. How ready is the service providers network in India to meet the demand of the future? And also, how is it evolving? We wanted a very India specific kind of answer.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the most relevant question, and as you rightly said, right, are all the service providers have been like backbone of our transformation of digital economy, and especially during the pandemic, right, which was the incident, and no one would have been like well prepared that how the dynamics of this network utilizations are going to be changed. But the good news is all our service providers in India have responded very well to those challenges, right? By quickly optimizing the network, deploying the capacity or moving the capacities around. And maybe I think what my personal or the industry view here is maybe like they have taken some steps in the past, in the era of the 4G itself, to move towards the 5G, which I also spoke in my presentation, that distribution and implementation of cloud. That really helped basically to quickly enable more and more broadband capacities, right? And serve our customers when everybody was like either working from home, even going back to tier 2, tier 3 cities, but wanted to connect it to the business. So they have been an integral part. Now, if you coming back to a specific question on the readiness, Shubhendu, to be very honest, readiness is a continuous journey. What we say is what we have made ready. Yeah, I think the building block is there, but not necessarily it is going to serve the what is coming next also. But what we are happy about here is in the era of the 5G, where we talk about this distribution and cloud is one of the key enabler. Our operators have already taken that steps, right? Many have already started implementing this telco data centers, wherever possible. Trying earlier, like we used to have 2 or 3 packet core sites in a given circle or a city, they have gone into double digits. It essentially means we are moving towards those distributed kind of architecture. That's one thing, which is a key enabler. Secondly, and a very very important point, the fiberization of basically the base stations. Though we are not reached to that pace. What I believe from the last some of the market numbers, 33% base stations are today fiberized. And what we need here is basically a more base station has to be fiberized to deliver that experience what we have been talking about 5G, right? Because 5G is again, once people will get starting hooked to it, they need to experience a different service experience, right? Vis-a-vis what they were getting in the 4G. So all these microwave links, which are currently being used as a backhaul, in majority, I'm not saying all, because there is an effort to move towards fiberization of all those nodes, right? Would be very important. I know these are some external factors which are like driven by some industry constraint, like right of way to fiberize everything, and also importantly the exorbitant spectrum cost, right, which they have been negotiating with the governments, though they have started trials in all the spectrum, 700 megahertz, 3.5 and 26 megahertz, which has been allocated for basically these trials. But I think they are more interested into a lower spectrum, 700 megahertz, which can actually give a more reach. I mean, it's a law of the waves, right? I think lower the frequency, you have a more reach, but there is a trade-off that the bandwidth becomes less. So I think those deployment scenario will vary from basically a pocket to pocket and segment to segment, which they are going to address, right? And so from the readiness perspective, whatever can be done at their side in terms of this infrastructure, maybe like getting this telco cloud ready, augmenting their metros, going more distributed way, right? Basically, uh, in the real trials of some of this, the CUPS model implementation, and all those things. Yeah, I think eventually we'll move them towards the 5G implementation. And I'm very optimistic, right, in terms of if you read the recent Ericsson report, right, the mobility report, it talks about like by 2026, India will have roughly around 330 million 5G subscribers, right? So I'm sure like whatever ground concerns are there, those will be anyway solved and we'll get to the 5G.
Yeah. Almost 26%. Yeah. So experts have been pointing out that the next decade will be revolutionized by the cloud computing, which we are already seeing the uptake. There's a massive digitalization, and what will happen is so the entire industry will start to move from the regional data centers to the edge and far edge data centers. So what do you think will be the impact on business model of service providers, and what should they do to generate new revenue streams? Because as we all know, the ARPU in India is very low, and and the services that could take care of its long-term growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as we have been talking about this, right? The way the clouds are going to be distributed, you know, in the from centralized to distributed to the far end, and in fact, this will bring the positive impact, I would say, right? Because these clouds, what they are implementing, I mean, more than like which they are actually built for, right? Delivering the telco cloud applications and the RAN architecture, they can easily leverage these clouds basically to enterprise services also, right? For example, the SD-WAN local breakout and managed security, right? And maybe the wired and wireless assurance. So I think the deployment of this cloud is actually opening up a bigger horizon to introduce more and more services out of that cloud. And yeah, I'm sure that these SPs are already thinking in that direction, and soon they will start leveraging that.
So just to understand, since you talked about the entire network transformation, and since we are now moving towards the 5G era, so from the network rollout perspective, how different is 5G network from 4G? And what kind of challenges do you see in rolling out the 5G network?
Yeah, sure, Shubhendu. So I think, yeah, the challenge is something I already, I'm just trying to answer your second part, right? The challenges, anyway, I'll reiterate it again, though I tried to answer in one of the first question. But yeah, I think if you see from the architecture, right, from starting from the radio side of it, it's totally different than what the approach people were taking in the era of the 4G. We are talking about, right, the cloudification of basically the cell site itself with the concept of this RU, CU, and DU and the Open RAN. And this decoupling of the function will also drive the basically the XOL architecture, right? Whether they will be going with the front haul, mid haul, or back haul, depending upon, again, as I said, what they are trying to achieve, right? If the motive is more coverage by spanning the radio away from the base stations and optimizing the radio resources, it essentially means you would require more fiberization. And as we spoke about, the challenges with the fiberization is just not it's about the cost, but there are some external factors also, which is probably slowing down the entire process, right? And if we have to really move towards 5G much commercial launch much faster, yeah, I think there is a close coordination required between the operators and the regulatories department who are issuing this, the rights basically for the implementation. Secondly, on the core side, right, the architecture is, again, it's completely different than though in the most of the era, the operators will start with the non-standalone method of the 5G implementation, where they will leverage the existing EPCs, right, to serve or connect back this 5G. But that will not actually drive the real advantages, right, which we have been talking about, offering differential services and making this architecture highly scalable, right, using those micro services based architecture, right? Because the slicing is one of the key important requirement which the next generation 5G will enable. So I think, again, moving from, say, the NSA to SA mode, it will require some kind of an integration and migration efforts, and you require basically the I would say a hell lot of resource, right? The skill resource, basically to understand this entire ecosystem, which we are talking about. Just not about the radio, but right, and there are so many things we are talking about which enable 5G, like the AI and the cloud technology. So you will need also the basically the skill set to drive this. Not the all the domains one skill set would be driving, but as a holistic strategy, right, to enable the 5G in a much the faster way. And second, I think some of the points are already covered, like the spectrum challenges which are already there. Those needs to be solved in a much faster way for us to going commercially live, soon. So in a nutshell, if I have to summarize all this together, right, I think the challenges are around the fiber. Again, the cloud and distributed cloud, which I spoke about, I think, but the more important point about here is, do we have that, the real-time infrastructure to enable the far edge cloud, right? And hence, whatever, I'll be candid, right? There are some things which we are even talking on the papers when we have to actually implement that. We have to be cognizant of the fact which are there on the ground with respect to the infrastructure. So I think the placement of this distributed cloud will be also very strategic in terms of what infra is available on that specific site. So fiber, infra, and again, we are talking about connection of so many devices. Security, including the infrastructure security and end user security, is also another a mammoth task is there ahead in front of operators, which will enable more challenges. Yeah, that's what I can think about. I think maybe
So
there are many
just tell
things
me,
more, but yeah.
Mhm. Can you read mind? No,
Why?
because you no, because you preempted a lot of my questions.
Is it?
Anyways,
Is it so?
so anyways, uh, since we are very short of time and we are moving closer to the deadline, there's a couple of things. Technology. Whenever we talk about, we also say that technology can enable or help improve revenues. That's how we have started looking at it. Now, service providers seems to be facing a big challenge of a flat and linear revenue growth. You touched upon it briefly. Uh, and on one hand, and there is also a need for huge investment for continuous network and infrastructure
Yeah.
upgrade. As you mentioned, earlier, that it is not one-time thing; it's a continuous thing. Now, how do you see Juniper help or address this issue? So there is a linear revenue growth, and there is also a need for a huge investment. So can we, you know, can technology and Juniper help bring it closer, bridge this, that gap?
Sure, Shubhendu. Yeah, I think I would try to answer this in a more Juniper way rather than the industry view, right? And as exactly you asked about it, how Juniper is solving. So I briefly talk about in the flow of the presentation, right? We are like opening the many options and flexibility in terms of starting from this network function, right? To be available just not in the part of as a part of the platform, but as a virtualization, right? Which gives a control back in the hand of operator, basically, to choose and pick up and deploy any network function which is working best for their suited requirement at the best economy. Secondly, moving towards specific again towards the platform, right? I spoke about pay as you grow. So providing them a platform which has the highly scalable and varieties of the interface, varieties of the speed, varieties of the services, but not charging them upfront. So give them an option, basically what they need today, go and pick up, buy that part of it. And when they need more, then without forklifting of those devices, just go for the software upgrade. So I think this has been well received by in many markets where people are 100% not sure about how this industry is going to evolve and what more impact they will have in terms of this data tsunami, right? So something which is deployed here, I mean, we should not be obsoleting that, after a couple of years, right? That's either a waste or they even don't need to go and actually redeploy this somewhere else. But even that's the OPEX cost. So by offering this pay as you grow, subscribe the service what you need, these are the key enablers. Secondly, we are making a continuous efforts in terms of how we are developing our products, right? And making them available in a more optimal form factor, because space is again a critical thing for the overall TCO of the operator at the best power consumption per gig. And this has been always in the reducing side with more and more the our product portfolio evaluation. And we have also launched some of our the merchant based silicon platform to further optimize the cost and for this specifically for this metro rollouts, where we see that majority of the data growth is going to happen as the thin line, right? Or I would say between the access, pre-aggregation, and aggregation is getting blurred day by day with the architecture which we are deploying in the era of 5G. So reducing the basically providing the platform pay as you grow, optimizing the way we are our power footprint. These are the some things which we are taking a step towards to reduce the overall cost. Plus the automation I spoke about, right? I think, yeah, of course that's going to solve a lot of the problems, right, in terms of the upfront capex, as we are talking about running the network more hotter rather than making the pipe flat and dumb, right? You need to make the pipe fat, but at the same time it has to be smart, right? So I think these are the some initiatives or already available solutions which I spoke of so through my presentation, offering to our the size providers.
Thanks. And there are a couple of audience questions which have come in, and yeah, one of them is on security. I'm skipping that. You've already covered that. Okay, so here is what are the use cases from automation perspective for ISPs? You talked about automation, but someone from the audience wants to know what are the use cases from automation perspective for ISPs.
Okay, see, yeah, okay. I mean, the list can go on, right? And there are these are the overlapping with respect to what automation use cases our telcos are driving, or the other sectors are driving. But as you asked this specific question about the ISP, I mean, I could think, I mean, in generic, right from enabling the service, mapping it to the specific, basically the path, and once the service is launched, uh, actively monitoring it and taking a closed loop action, right? That remains same across the ISP and the telcos. But more importantly, how they can actually leverage this automation use case to monetize the network. I think one of the use case can be a egress path engineering, where uh, I'll go a bit technical here. Apologies for it, but with the current BGP policies, right, they're able to control the incoming traffic for a specific customer or a specific segments. But the outgoing is driven by, as the IP is basically the destination-based routing. Everything goes via the same path. With this egress path engineering, with the help of the capabilities on the platform and the abstraction or the controller layer, they can actually steer a traffic for a specific customer via a more premium path for the outgoing flow. And they can charge them back, right? And I mean, every use case which we are talking about, either they should help them in the operation use case, or whether they should be able to monetize it or help them to in their planning stage. So I'm more talking about the monetization of that specific use case of automation. Egress path engineering, which comes on top of my mind. Could be more. I mean, I don't want to restrict myself, but this was the very abrupt question what I feel, and that's the best answer which I can give right now.
Thanks. And considering the time, I'd like to take one more. It says, in the age of virtualization and distributed cloud deployment, how is service solution going to be differentiated with the interplay of technology at network and application layer? Do ISPs need to have all kind of legacy flexibility?
If I got this quite right, it essentially means in this transformation era which we are talking about, so many services, how these are going to be like given a tailored experience, right, throughout the network. If I get this question correctly, apologies if the meaning of this question is something different, but that's what I can make out. So I spoke about the slicing, right, and that's going to be a key enabler to basically differentiate between the services. And when we say about the slicing, we are talking about the slicing per services per applications. This can be in the finite numbers and can be in terms of hundreds. But the whole idea here is mapping that specific service right from the radio to the transport to the packet core. That's the key thing, and that can be enabler with the use of multiple controllers which are controlling the respective domain, but having a close coordination through orchestration layer so that seamlessly they can map these services throughout the network domains. And once the mapping is done, it's very easy to do a differential treatment by mapping the specific service to a specific LSP path or the SR path. So all these technologies are actually enabling this differentiated experience. And if the question is, can this be done on the legacy infra, if I got the other part of the question correctly? I mean, this would vary. I mean, I cannot settle the answer right now, but what we are talking about, the enabling, the slicing throughout the network, we are not talking about a one technology, even though there are, say, legacy devices in the network, which are not capable of handling some of the advanced technology. I think there are many way arounds, right? Using the traditional method of RSVP, or even implement the flex algos, and still able to like merge this technology together to deliver the outcome. So this will vary from the operator network to operator and require more deeper or consulting type of discussions.
Thanks. I'll just take one more question, last question. You talked about the RAN and Open RAN architecture, how it is required. Now, this is a question: how is Juniper contributing to Open RAN?
Very relevant questions, right? Because we are not basically a radio company. But yeah, taking a step back, right? You spoke about the open RAN, and wherever there is an openness term being used, we feel happy about it, because that has been our strategy since beginning, right? Since the inception of our first platform itself, open interface, open protocol, and the open integrations. The same methodology we have adopted, and we believe our operators are also not going to tied up with a specific radio vendor, but they will select the best technology vendor at the best price, which essentially means this will drive the more open architecture in the network. To comply with that, I actually did mention we acquired a Nitsia, which is an open RIC radio intelligent controller, as a part of this strategy, so that our operators who are buying the open RAN from any vendor can actually integrate with the Juniper RIC, and which can enable this basically the slicing piece on the radio side, and rest I spoke about, right, how this can integrate with the multiple controller to enable the entire slicing throughout the network.
Thanks.
So that's what
Thank
we are
you,
going to play.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vali, for taking up so many questions and your candid responses. And thanks again for the wonderful presentation earlier in the session and walking us through the technologies.
Yeah, again, sorry about that glitch. I feel nervous about that glitch. Sorry.
No, we really didn't notice it. Unless
the
you had mentioned
presentation
about
just disappeared. I don't know what was happening. So I just got shocked, like what to speak about, that it was not in front of me. But anyways, I think, yeah. So I think if the overall message has been represented well, I think this makes my day.
And I also thank Juniper Networks India for supporting this technology session of today's. And on behalf of Cyber Media and Voice and Data, I also thank the participants who joined us today to make this a success. And I'm happy to inform you all that today's webinar will be available as video on demand on the Voice and Data YouTube channel for you to watch it again and share. And with this, now we'll call it a day today. But before that, may I request you all to share your feedback through the forms that will be visible on your screen as you disconnect. And thanks again, Vali. Signing off now. This is Shubhendu Parth, your
pleasure.
host for today's webinar.
Thanks,
Stay
everyone.
home,
Be safe.
stay
Take care.
safe, and keep reading Voice and Data. Thank you.
Thank you.